When someone goes missing, there's usually a trail to follow, a reason, a clue, a body. But what if the person just vanishes without explanation? No footprints, no scent trail, no logical reason. Just gone. That's the chilling world of the missing 411. The term comes from the work of David Paulides, a former police officer in the United States who began investigating strange disappearances in national parks and rural areas. These weren't your typical missing person cases. They shared eerie similarities, like people vanishing just steps from friends or family, sudden weather shifts, and recovered items in places no human should have been able to reach. Often, search dogs refuse to track the scent. Sometimes, the victims are found alive, but dazed, confused, and unable to explain what happened. Paulides has documented hundreds of these baffling cases across North America. But what many people don't realise is that Ireland has its own missing 411 stories. Disappearances from the Wicklow Mountains, the cliffs of County Donegal, the ancient woods of Kerry, places steeped in legend where folklore and mystery have always walked hand in hand. In this episode, we'll take you into the wilds of Ireland, where 5 strange and unsettling vanishings mirror the same terrifying patterns Paulides uncovered. These aren't just stories. These are real places, real people, real disappearances. So, if you're alone, maybe turn on a light. Because these are the Irish cases of Missing 411. The Vanishing on Slieve. Kate, a 29-year-old solo hiker from Sligo, was no stranger to Ireland's wild terrain. She had walked the Slieve cliffs twice before. On the morning of September 18th, 2017, she left her B&B in Carrick, telling the owner she'd be back by early evening. She carried her camera, a packed lunch, and her phone. The forecast was clear and the route familiar. Around 11:30 a.m., another walker saw her near the Pilgrim's Path, smiling, headphones in, taking photos of the sea. At 2:42 p.m., she texted her partner a photo, waves crashing below, taken from a high point. But there was something strange about the angle. It didn't match any known viewpoint. That was the last anyone heard from her. When she didn't return by nightfall, the B&B owner called the Gardaí. A large search was launched. Mountain rescue teams, helicopters, drones, and search dogs were brought in. For 2 days, they scoured the cliffs and trails. Then, without warning, the weather turned. Thick fog, followed by heavy rain, forced them to suspend operations. It was as if the mountain was pushing them away. No trace of Kate was found. No clothing, no footprints, nothing. Then, on the 5th day, a breakthrough. A local rock climber exploring a flooded sea cave near Malin Beg spotted something resting on a stone ledge. Kate's phone. It was bone dry. The cave was only accessible by climbing gear and was partly submerged by the tide. Kate had no climbing gear and no experience. Her phone still had battery, and there was a video taken moments before the last photo. It showed the sky, the ocean, and then a sound. Distant, melodic, almost like someone singing. There was no scream, no struggle, just wind and that song. Local folklore tells of the cliffs around Slieve as thin places, where the boundary between worlds wears thin. In one 19th century account, a fisherman claimed to see a woman in white walking across the water before vanishing into mist. Others speak of lights or voices calling from the sea. Kate's disappearance has never been solved. The phone was the only thing ever recovered. Today, hikers still walk the same path she did. Some leave flowers where she was last seen. Others report a strange stillness in the air, a drop in temperature near the edge. A few say they've heard faint music rising from below the cliffs, carried on the wind. The case remains open. The boy who walked into the trees. On May 14, 2004, a primary school from Dublin took a class trip to Glendalough in the Wicklow Mountains. The weather was clear, the trails dry. Teachers split the group into 2 and took the kids on a circular route past the lake and into the edge of the forest. At 11:15 a.m., one boy, 8 years old, stopped to tie his shoe. His group was just ahead, and a teacher walking behind saw him pause briefly. When they turned around less than a minute later, he was gone. At first, they thought he'd run ahead or slipped into the woods for a laugh. They called out. Nothing. The forest was dense, but the trail was clear. He couldn't have gone far. Within an hour, a search was underway. By 3 p.m., mountain rescue, Gardaí and locals had joined in. The forest was combed. Helicopters flew overhead. Sniffer dogs were brought in. But something was strange. The dogs followed the boy's scent to a clearing, then stopped and refused to go further. One lay down and whimpered. No sign of struggle, no footprints off the trail. He had vanished. Searches continued for days. Divers checked the nearby lake. Nothing. Then, 9 days later, his school cap was found, 20 miles north, balanced neatly on top of an ancient dolmen in a farmer's field. The hat was dry, clean. It had rained heavily the night before. There was no sign of the boy, and no explanation of how his cap could have travelled so far. Some whispered about the old ways. Glendalough has always been surrounded by folklore, tales of monks who vanished, shadowy figures in the trees, and lights that dance just out of reach. The dolmen, said to be a portal in local legend, had stories attached to it dating back generations. Farmers claimed to hear voices near it at night. Others said animals avoided the field entirely. The boy was never found. His parents returned every year for 5 years, leaving flowers at the trailhead and a toy at the dolmen. They never gave up hope, but there were no more leads. In 2017, a hiker reported seeing a child standing at the edge of the same trail where he vanished. The boy didn't move. When the hiker called out, he turned and stepped into the trees. The hiker followed for only a few seconds, then stopped. The forest was suddenly silent, empty. He couldn't find the child again. The case remains unsolved. The Fiddler on Croagh Patrick. Each year on the last Sunday in July, thousands of pilgrims climb Croagh Patrick in County Mayo. Known as Reek Sunday, the tradition dates back centuries. In 2019, a man named Daniel, a 42-year-old schoolteacher from Galway, set out alone to make the climb for the 6th time. The weather was good that morning, clear skies and a steady breeze. Daniel left his car at the car park just before 7 a.m. He was well prepared, hiking boots, windbreaker, backpack with water and snacks. By 9 a.m., he was seen by several other climbers at the halfway point. He told one woman that he hoped to reach the summit before the crowds arrived. That was the last confirmed sighting. When he didn't return by evening, his sister raised the alarm. Search teams were on the mountain by nightfall. For 3 days they scoured the trail, surrounding ridges and lower slopes. Helicopters scanned from above. Volunteers checked every gully. Nothing. Not a jacket, not a phone, not a footprint. Then a drone picked up something odd, a single trail of boot prints, veering off the main path near the summit. They ended abruptly on a rocky ledge. There were no signs of a fall, no scuff marks, no drop zone. Just a perfect stop, as if Daniel had simply vanished into the wind. On the 3rd night, a rescue worker sitting alone at base camp reported hearing music drifting down from the mountain. A fiddle tune, faint but clear. He assumed it was a hiker playing near the summit, but others heard it too. When they tried to locate the source, it stopped. No hikers were up there. The summit had been empty since sunset. Locals weren't surprised. There's an old story about a fiddler who vanished on the mountain in the 1800s. He had been walking with his brother when they heard music coming from the rocks above. The fiddler climbed up to investigate and was never seen again. Since then, people have occasionally reported hearing music near the summit with no visible source. Daniel's family returned every year on the anniversary of his disappearance. They spoke of dreams where they heard him playing fiddle music, though Daniel had never played an instrument in his life. The mountain has a history of strange vanishings. In 1995, an Italian tourist went missing for 2 days and was later found barefoot, sitting silently at the summit, unable to explain where he had been. In that case, he returned. Daniel did not. No remains have ever been found. His phone was never recovered. The weather on the day of his disappearance had been perfect. No fog, no rain, no sudden storm. Some believe he simply lost his footing. Others think something older, something stranger, called to him from the stones. To this day, hikers still report hearing music on Croagh Patrick, and the case remains open. The Man in the Mist at Torc Waterfall. Laura and James had been travelling around Ireland for 2 weeks when they arrived at Killarney National Park. Both were amateur wildlife photographers, drawn by stories of red deer and rare birds. On March 22nd, 2011, they set off just after sunrise to capture morning mist around Torc Waterfall. The trail was empty at that hour, and the mist clung low to the trees. Laura walked ahead with the camera while James lingered near the falls. She turned back after a few minutes and saw him following the path, just ahead of her. She raised her camera and snapped a picture. When she caught up, James was still behind her. Confused, Laura checked the photo. It clearly showed a man walking away, but his clothes didn't match James's. His jacket was darker, his build heavier. His face, partially obscured by the fog, looked strangely blurred, as if the camera had struggled to focus. James laughed it off. "Just another hiker," he said, but they didn't pass anyone else that morning. Later that night, back at their guest house, James began to act strangely. He was distant, distracted. Around 2 a.m., Laura woke to find him standing by the window, staring toward the forest. He didn't speak. When she touched his arm, he blinked as if waking from a dream. At dawn, he was gone. His boots were missing. His coat still hung on the door. The guest house owner hadn't seen him leave. Gardaí were called, and a search began immediately. Dogs followed his scent from the back door into the woods, but the trail ended abruptly at a patch of disturbed moss. No prints, no broken branches, no sign of where he went next. 3 days later, James was found 10 miles away near the upper lake, barefoot, disoriented, and silent. His feet were scratched and bruised, but otherwise he was unharmed. He didn't remember walking there. He didn't remember leaving the room. When asked about the photograph, Laura said she deleted it. "I didn't like the way it felt," she said. "It looked like he wasn't meant to be there." Old stories from the Torc area tell of a man in the mist, someone who appears when the air is thick and the forest is quiet. In some versions, he leads travellers off the path. In others, he trades places with those who follow him. James never spoke about what happened. He stopped hiking after that, moved inland, became withdrawn. In 2016, another walker near Torc took a photo of the same trail at dawn. A man appears in the image, facing away, wearing a dark jacket, features indistinct. When the photographer looked again seconds later, no one was there. Some places are beautiful because they are wild, others because they are old. Torc may be both. The case remains unexplained. The light over Lough Tay. Lough Tay, often called the Guinness Lake because of its dark water and white sandshore, lies tucked between the hills of Wicklow. It's a quiet, brooding place, especially after dark. On October 9th, 2020, 2 university students, Mary and Connor, camped in the hills overlooking the lake. Both studied environmental science and had planned the trip to photograph nocturnal wildlife. They pitched their tent above the northern shore and settled in as the sun dipped below the hills. Just after midnight, Mary was awakened by a soft glow outside the tent, pale blue light drifting over the lake's surface. At first, she thought it was moonlight, but when she looked again, the light was hovering above the water, pulsing gently. Connor stirred beside her. "I'm going to get a better look," he mumbled, grabbing his phone. She waited. A minute passed, then 5. She unzipped the tent and stepped into the night. Connor was gone. No sound, no footprints, just stillness. The light had vanished. Panicked, Mary called his name. No response. She tried his phone. No answer. Within 30 minutes, she was banging on the door of a nearby lodge. Garda E arrived by 2 a.m., and the search began before sunrise. Drones flew over the lake. Dogs were brought in. Search teams scoured the hills, but there was no sign of Connor, no tracks, no gear. It was as if he had stepped into the dark and disappeared. 3 days later, his phone was found resting on a stone outcrop overlooking the water. It was dry, undamaged, and fully charged. Inside was one new video. It showed Connor walking toward the lake. At first, everything was normal. Crickets, the rustle of trees. Then a low hum began, and the camera shook slightly. He stopped and turned, as if hearing something behind him. He whispered, "It's calling me." The video ended there. Lough Tay has long been a place of mystery. Locals speak of the lake's strange stillness, especially in the off-season. Some call it the Lake of Shadows. There are stories, rarely told now, of lights hovering over the water, luring people toward the edge. In the 1940s, a shepherd reportedly saw a man made of stars walk into the lake and vanish. Most people dismiss the old tales, but after Connor's disappearance, another witness came forward. A trail runner claimed he saw a light low over the water just before dawn on the same night. He assumed it was a drone, until it rose straight up into the air and blinked out. Connor was never found. No body, no sign of struggle, no reason. Mary never returned to the Wicklow Mountains. She left college and now lives abroad. She told a journalist in 2022, "I know what I saw, and I know what I heard. Something wanted him." The case remains open. 5 people, 5 different places, all gone under circumstances that defy logic, explanation, and in some cases, even belief. In the wilderness of Ireland, among the misty cliffs, ancient forests and quiet lakes, there are places where people vanish without reason. Some are never found, others return changed, silent or confused. Time and again, these disappearances follow patterns seen around the world. The same chilling details David Paulides has documented in his Missing 411 research. And while Ireland's landscape is rich in myth and legend, what happens when the stories begin to mirror reality? What happens when the folklore starts looking like a warning? Maybe these are just tragic accidents. Maybe there are explanations we've yet to understand. Or maybe, just maybe, there are places on this island where the rules don't work the way they should. Thanks for watching. If you've had a strange experience in the Irish wilds, or know a story that's never been explained, tell us in the comments. And remember, some paths in Ireland are better left unexplored.